You're listening to SM Media, the number one place for exclusive Scottish football content.
Hi folks, and welcome to the latest episode of the SM Media Scottish Football Show. I'm Scott McPike. It's an absolute pleasure to be your host as always, and I'm delighted to welcome this week's special guest. First of all, I'm delighted to introduce the only person in Scottish football as a manager who didn't have a VAR decision go against him this weekend. It is, of course, the manager of St Cuthbert Wanderers. It's a pleasure to welcome back to the show, Josh Gardner. Josh, how are we?
Mate, I'm brilliant. Really good. Glad to be back on again for the third time. You've promised me a hat-trick ball as well now that I'm back on again. So
balls in the post. I just need to get a big parcel to send it in.
But I've not had a VAR decision against me, but I'm sure if there was cameras, I would have had one.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a pleasure to welcome from the Gallant Few podcast. Thank you very much for joining us, Colin MacDuff. Colin, welcome to the show.
Evening, Scott. Evening, Josh. Delighted to be on. I think last time I done a podcast with you, Scott, I had the pleasure of speaking about the Colin Wanderers, so I'm hoping this is a much happier podcast.
Yep, and the referees were just as bad then as they are now. And that is the kind of theme of the show this week. I think it's going to be about VAR, it's going to be about protests, it's just like 2006, Colin.
I know, I'm getting PTSD already thinking about it, mate.
Let's start with what the usual theme of the show is. We go through the weekend's games in the Premiership. We spend a bit of time talking about each game, and we then talk about a couple of talking points. Then we go into the other leagues in the SPFL. Then we wrap up the show. It's not going to be like that this week because I think every game had one big common occurrence, Josh, and it was the rather bizarre weekend of VAR.
I just don't get how we're messing up having the technology and the replays and that. We seem to be worse this year than what we were the year before we put it. It just doesn't make sense. It's like we've got a very light version of it as well. We've not got obviously down south anywhere near it. We've not got enough cameras, so some of the camera angles we get for stuff as well, like the Rangers offside goal, the one that was checked. I thought that looked a bit dodgy. The line didn't even look straight, which they drew for it. I just don't know how you can make a 100% a decision on that. Surely that's to clear up any grey areas. And you're even getting to that decision, it's still a grey area, but you've just convinced us with your magical line that it's onside or it's offside. It's just, I just don't get with the technology how we're worse. I don't get it. It's like we're scared to make proper decisions as well because we're just waiting on VAR refereeing the game for us.
Colin, obviously, Rangers played on Saturday at Motherwell and VAR was involved in there for 2 goals. From an offside perspective, it also had a decision. VAR wasn't really involved in the decision to send off the boy Slattery at Motherwell. But it hasn't been a good weekend now. Is that a case of, is the technology to blame or is it the operators that are to blame for that? Because that is where we're at now. We have people, and this is why I think recording it on a Monday night was a good idea because we then had the Monday fallout in the media. We saw a lot of people say that VAR needs to go, but a lot of more sensible people, I would say, are saying it's the people operating it that's the issue.
Aye, and that was my worry when VAR first came in, that the technology does work. I'm a firm believer of that, but if you've got the same incompetent referees using it, then it's never going to be used effectively. And we didn't have good referees before VAR. We don't have them now, and it doesn't look like it's going to improve anytime soon. And I think we were talking off air. You could do a full 5-part podcast on the state of Scottish refereeing, but for me, there's no infrastructure, there's no management. We fast track through these referees, give them high-profile games. If they make a mistake, they get punted down to the Championship for a couple of games and brought back up. There's no consequence. There's no management. I'm sure the players all work full-time. If I don't do my job well, my manager's going to sit down and say, you need to do X, Y, and Z. Right, I'm going to be performance managed. There's nothing, even in professional sport, that will happen in any sport, any party, whether you're a player, you're a coach. The same should apply to referees. And until we take a bit of ownership on that, it's got to continue to be the same. The technology isn't the issue; it's the operators, as you say.
Josh, if you're a football manager, right, and a very good one, if you have a technology come into St Cuthbert's tomorrow that's going to revolutionise your club, and it's going to help you pick a team, right? If a month in that technology, you've had very little training on it, and you're not using that technology right, is that the technology's fault, or is that the person being coached? Is that the coach? Is that the person training you to use that equipment's fault?
It's probably the person training you to use the equipment's fault. But again, like as I said, like I do think it's a mixture of a bit of both. I do think it's a mix. Like one, we've got a light version of it. We all know that, but it is also some parts of it is the ruling as well. Sometimes we look at the rules and you go like, that's never like some of the handball rules we see like that's never a handball. That's just the ruling. So part of it is the ruling as well. But then the other part of it is it's like we failure to see common sense in some of these like decisions. Like I'm trying to think of one. The one that pops out to me at the weekend is the St Mirren penalty. That was that was wild. Like I don't know how anybody can look at that and go, "Ah, that's a penalty." Do you know what I mean? It's maybe one of the ones first glance you think, and then when you see it the second time, you're like, "No, it's definitely not a penalty." But we just still come to that conclusion. So that's the person that's using it. That's their point of view and their interpretation of it. But as Colin said, like it's the same incompetent referees every single week, and it doesn't matter how much equipment you give them or what you're going to do with them or how much training you give. If they're continuously making these same mistakes all the time, then how's it going to change? Do you just need to persevere with it for a year or two and hopefully the penny drops, or do you try and train your referees up more full time? Like, what's the answer?
But what do you think when you hear like people like Ali McCoist and Andy Walker on the TV today saying we need to get rid of VAR? What I don't understand that. Surely that's the last thing surely if there's one thing we need to do, it is to improve the use of VAR. Now I'm not saying VAR's brilliant. I'm not saying it's totally 100% foolproof. But if you're moaning to everybody 2 years ago that we're so far behind at every other league because they've all got VAR. I think Scotland were the only league in the top 15 in Europe that didn't have VAR. When you then get it introduced and it's not working, but the other 14 leagues, we're the only country that actively we're rid of the technology instead of getting around a table, which we should have done at the start before this was introduced, and say, right, this needs to take properly 100% put through. It needs to be coached. Every single person that's going to be using this needs 100% coaching on it. We work in full-time jobs. We don't have do you know what I mean? We aren't allowed to lift a box without going through 100% manual handling. Why is it allowed in Scottish football?
Scott, I've been dying to hear your rant about this all day.
It's farcical though, and I kind of look at this as kind of looking at other leagues. I'll watch a lot of football. I watch football in every country, and I don't in any league here. We need to get rid of the technology. If anything, you want the technology to be improved. You want people to use it right. What you don't see in the media, and Ali McCoist, I think, Colin will tell you. Colin will tell you I'm a massive Ali McCoist fan, but for him to come out today and say, I would be happy if VAR wasn't here. I'd be happy to go back to the 2000s when there was all you had was a referee, an assistant. If you've got technology there in the modern day and we're not willing to use it, we're just happy to accept it's a failure. That needs addressed. That needs the big wigs of the SFA, Josh, keen to get your thoughts on this later on. They haven't covered themselves in glory in the past few weeks with this Conference League shambles. They need to step up.
Didn't get me started with that.
Right, but is that not the theme here, that the people introducing this need looked at, not the technology?
That's been the case for years, but to be honest with you, like it's not just they've been making bad decisions for years. Like I don't know about you, I watch a lot of the Bundesliga. And I was watching the Bundesliga at the weekend, and I think it was Bayern Leverkusen and Bayern Munich, and they used it brilliantly. And like everybody in their studio was like bigging it up and talking about how good VAR is and how far along they've came with it. And then you come to our game, and it's like we're getting decisions wrong. It's like the complete opposite. We've got people in our media choking for it to just be flung out instead of just learning how to use it. Just learn how to use the technology, learn how to do it. And I think that's a big thing. But if I had to say to you, think about back to the start of the season. Have we got better with VAR for the start of the season till now? What would you say?
No, catches make a point in that. What's with the referees, and again, it's because they're incompetent referees. They're now letting VAR make the decision for them, and you see it time and time again.
Yeah.
The further the season goes on, the more they're panicking. And John Beaton, I think he's one of the worst for it, and he's always been a rabbit in the headlights in any big occasion. But you see him time and time again. They're waiting for the wee guy in the van to make the decision for them, and until we address the standard of the referees, it's going to get worse and worse.
And that's the bit I'm getting at.
You made a point there about the Bundesliga, though. Seeing all these leagues that we watch every week, did they introduce it at the start of the season or midway through the season?
The start.
Right. Only in Scotland would you be halfway through a season and introduce this revolutionary technology.
And they trialled it as well, I'm sure, in like 10 random games. I'm sure if I'm right in here, we only done it in 2 games or something. And then we just put it live straight away. Usually we half-arse everything we do.
It's something that's not going to go away. And do you know what? I'm quite glad we've got an international break this weekend because I'm fed up listening. See, today, I could have turned my television off. And I like the ref watch and things like that. But for example, Richard Foster's another one. Do you know what I mean? Like these guys are what are they wanting? Do they want to see Scottish football improved, or do they want to see us going back 20 years when every other league we're talking again? We'll go back to this Conference League thing. This Conference League's been introduced to help us progress in Europe. Surely VAR's the same. Surely we want to be with those big leagues, not 20 years back the way and not implementing modern day technology because it doesn't suit certain people because certain people can't use it right. That's where we're at. That is the problem.
I think there's a wider issue, the standard of journalism up here as well. And
could go on all day about that as well.
Aye, and I mean we're starting to make a very, very fun hobby out of this. The thing is, like fan media isn't a thing if the standard of journalism was fit for purpose up here, but they do thrive in the non-issues, and I'm quite disappointed Ali McCoy's he's fallen into that trap because he's a really good pundit. He won Pundit of the Year and on TalkSport and down south, he's excellent. He wouldn't come away with that comment down south, but it's just nobody takes our game seriously up here, and why should they with the decisions that they make?
Again, it's something we could go on about for days and days, but let's get into why we do this. We'll talk about football over the weekend without the shambolic refereeing. We'll start at Parkhead, Josh. Celtic 3, Hibs 1. Obviously, referees did have their part here. Obviously, Ewan was sent off. I thought Celtic were a bit flat. I don't think they were at their best. Obviously, the red card did help to later on. I think the international break is coming at the right time for Celtic.
Aye, it has. On the sending off again, I had one I seen one similar in a game the other week there as well, and I just don't know, like, I just think that's dead soft again. Like, I just think if you know the game, that's not a sending off. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just football. It's just a coming together in the middle of the pitch. Just, I mean, not one of the two of them would have moaned about it and just got up and got on with it. Do you know what I mean? But on Celtic, they probably do need to hit maybe even just give players a rest. Like, there's guys that haven't stopped for the last break, like Callum McGregor and stuff like that. So, although he'll probably go away with Scotland, but I think with Celtic, they're just in that winning habit. And they've got a good squad, a good bench. Like, we bring on guys like Haksabanovic, and we can bring on your Abadas and stuff like that. And they're just good at shutting out games for us. Like, you seen it the other week when we played St Mirren, albeit they went down to 10 men, but like, we change it up a wee bit. We bring Abado and he gets 2 late goals. And do you know what I mean? We see the game out, we kill the game. And I think that's just a sign of where Celtic are at the minute. They've got the squad to compete on all fronts in the league, and they obviously going for a treble, and they're just in a really good place at the minute. Doesn't matter really seem to be what their form is when they go into game, whether they're flat or flying. They just seem to be coming out with victories, to be honest with you. And I'm right in saying they only need 5 or 6 more victories to clinch the title. So normally the hardest victories to get is the ones you need to get over the line. So you might find they might stutter over the line, I don't know, but they're in a really good place at the minute, Celtic, squad-wise and obviously results. And they had to dig deep a wee bit on Saturday. I never saw the game, only saw the highlights. Obviously, I had my own game, but no, there's just like a air of confidence about Celtic. Like when you're watching them, like no matter what the score is, even when they go 1-0 down, like they're no panicking. But the fans don't panic either.
Yeah.
It's like we know we're going to get back into it. And listen, we've been there on the other side of the coin where you go 1-0 down and we've had that like under Lennon most recently the disaster. Like when you went 1-0 down there, you had no confidence in coming back. But there just seems to be a calmness about the club now. They're just going to win all the time, to be honest with you.
Colin, looking at obviously Celtic's consistency, they've only dropped 5 points, and obviously, like looking at it from a Rangers perspective, you'll be looking at Rangers have been in a really good run since Beale's come in. They've only dropped 2 points against Celtic. How difficult is that when you're on that good run, but you look across the city and Celtic are just, again, difficult circumstances on Saturday, go behind, maybe not at their best, but they still find a way. It must be hard.
It pains me to say, but they're just a juggernaut this season, aren't they? And I think Josh hit the nail on the head there. Regardless of how the game's going, Celtic fancy themselves to get back into the game. But it's not just that. The teams they're up against, they fancy that they've got this fear that Celtic are going to creep back into the game. We've seen it against St Mirren as well. We've seen it against Hibs, and it's just that's that winning mentality, and it just keeps on breeding and breeding, and it's for the Rangers fans a vicious circle. The more they play, the more that fear's instilled, and the more they win. And it is quite disheartening when you're on a really good run from a Rangers point of view, but. I mean, Rangers are like, there's every chance Rangers could finish with their second highest ever total and it still wouldn't be enough. And all credit to Celtic, that doesn't just happen overnight. That's just consistently like being at it. And I do think the international break has come at the right time for Celtic because they are an intense team. They do try and go all guns blazing, and there's only so much you can do that. I think also the likes of McGregor and that will most likely feature for Scotland, but there'll be a lot of boys there that is Jota, Furiashi, Atati. I don't know how much they'll be involved in the international break, but if even 4 or 5 of the core players can get a wee rest, and I think they'll come back refreshed. Yeah.
Josh, obviously looking at Hibs as well, obviously they would have went 1-0 up and thought, right, this is a big chance, we can maybe get a result here. The red card kills them, but they've had a bit of a stall in momentum as of late. They were on a really good run. Obviously, the Rangers beat them at Easter Road, then obviously they went to Parkhead and beat. They're in a bit of a difficult run, Hibs, just now as well.
Aye, they picked it up as well. They were doing all right too. And I thought because Aberdeen were starting at the time, I thought Hibs could have maybe made a wee push for third because Hearts they were showing signs at the time of maybe dwindling a wee bit as well. But it's weird to be sad. I remember the last time I was on this show, I'm sure I said I wasn't really having Lee Johnson, but I've actually been quite impressed with how he's coped with like the loss of Porteous, and obviously I know he gets helped out with Nisbet and stuff coming back, but no, he's actually done really well there, to be honest with you, because they're definitely in a transitional phase a wee bit. But I think, see, ultimately, with like the Celtic and Rangers thing, I just think there's such a gulf between Celtic and Rangers and the rest of the teams. So I think that's why you see the teams just constantly going on a run. Like I even think for like Hearts to Rangers, who are second and third, it's just they're worlds apart. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I think these teams, when they turn up to play your Celtics and Rangers, they need Celtic and Rangers to have a really bad day and them to have a really good day. And even when Hibs did go 1-0 up, I know they get the man sent off, but did they really believe they could get a result that day? They probably didn't, because of how early it was in the game, and they probably thought, it's a bit long to hold out. Do you know what I mean? Because that's these teams' games plan at the end of the day. But they're not going to be judged on games like us. I think it's just important that when they come up against a Celtic and Rangers on a good day, is that they don't take a doing and they can then get back on the horse against the teams running about them. And I think that's really what, if I was a manager at Hibs, I think that's kind of what I'd be saying. Like, let's just hit the reset button and get ourselves back into the groove against whoever the next fixture is, which I don't think Celtic or Rangers. I can't remember who their next fixture's against, but that's what these teams kind of need to do, and they just kind of need to hit the reset button again once they've played the Old Firm in my book.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's move into the game at midday on Saturday, Motherwell versus Rangers. Colin, it was a very eventful game. First half, I don't think I've been as bored watching a game of football in all my life. Second half, it came to life, and I think it's a perfect description of this Rangers team at the moment. They find ways to make it difficult, but they dig out and get the result.
I tell you what, man, Rangers are going to be some team when they start playing for the first minute instead of the 45th. It's James Tavernier was talking in the press about that they need to take the positives, but they are resilient and they do respond if you're going a goal behind. But for Rangers fans, I'd like them to start playing beforehand, and that's 21 times Rangers have lost the first goal and had to come back, and that's losing 21 goals over a league season isn't great in the best of times, never mind losing it first. That is whatever Michael Beale does at half time, he has to harness that, and I don't know how he does. I think we spoke before, there has to be an overhaul of the core group of players over the next 2 or 3 windows, because it's happened too many times with these players under too many managers. Is that kind of mentality, whatever you want to call it, mentality, confidence, consistency, whatever it's called. But no, looking at the positives, they do respond, and when they do respond, they do really grow into the game. And I thought second half, the sending off killed it as well. But even before that, I thought once Rangers got the lead, they did look comfortable.
I didn't see that game, obviously, because I was travelling to my own game, and it's a camel trek down to Kirkcudbright to try and get a game in. But what is that then? So wait, was that something Motherwell were doing with they stifling Rangers? Were they kind of stopping them from playing? Did Motherwell change the second half, or was it Rangers that changed the second half? Like, what do you use as fans? What do you think that is? Like, why are they stuttering in games to begin with? Why are they losing the first goal?
It's for me, it's just the lack of energy that we start with, and Nicola Robertson and Todd Cantwell really helped with that, and Ryan Jack coming back as well. And I think a big difference on Saturday there was John Lundstrom and Ryan Jack trying to dominate in the middle of the park, where they'll be neat and tidy in the ball, but there's no that dynamism, that energy. And I think, for better for worse, Rangers as a team respond to what's happening in the middle of the park. So Motherwell took advantage of that, and I don't want to take it away from Motherwell. I fought for the first goal, even though it's a goal that Rangers concede time and time again. Yeah. It was really good play with Motherwell, and they purposely targeted that area, and I thought, credit where credit's due, Motherwell did make Rangers work to get back into the game.
Josh, one positive Rangers can obviously take is their consistency, but there are certain problems there that you look at, and Colin will agree with me here. I thought the front three on Saturday were really, really poor all game. I don't know if you've seen the Cholak opportunity, Josh.
What one's that? I did watch your highlights.
Todd Cantwell plays, I would say, probably one of the best passes I've seen a Rangers player play in God knows how long. And Cholak has either there's 2 options here: takes it on himself, that's the hardest of the 2, or squares it to Sakala.
Yeah, I did see it.
It's still in there just now. It's not. I
just think with Cholak, is he one of the guys though? Like, obviously, it looks as if Morelos is away. Am I right in saying it looks like Sevilla?
I would say it's very likely, yeah.
And I probably think it's the best time for him to go, to be honest with you. He's been a good servant. He's been brilliant for Rangers by and large. So I just don't know, and I could be totally wrong because I don't see a lot of him, because obviously I don't watch Rangers a lot, but Cholak doesn't seem to me to be that guy that's going to get you the barrel load of goals. Like, is he going to get you different types of goals? Like, see when I watch Kyogo, like, he's got goals, like, he scored goals from outside the box, he scored goals running off of defenders, he scores the tap-ins, and I don't see him getting that many goals. So I think that's obviously an area that Rangers need to do, but that's where you kind of off subject, look at what Arsenal do type thing. So they've not really got a number 9, but they work hard on getting the 2 number 8s high. They work their wingers, they leave their wingers high, and then they kind of make a conscious effort to share the goals round about. And I think maybe that looks as bit, in fairness to Beale, it looks like what he's trying to do, because you've got guys like, I've noticed, like, I thought Todd Cantwell was more of a sitting dictator type of player. That's what I thought he was. But then when I watched him, he's always busting into the box. He's trying to get into the box and stuff, and obviously he got a goal at the weekend. And then if you can share the goals amongst Cholak, Cantwell, add goals for midfield, and then you've got Sakala, and that's where I think Kent needs to get better. Kent needs to add goals to his game for there. And that's where I think maybe the main difference is between the two old firms. You think about, like Celtic, for example, you've got like Abada, Maeda, Haksabanovic is now adding in goals, and I think that's where, and in fairness, Sakala takes a lot of stick for a lot of people as well, but I think one thing he does is he chips in with goals. And I think that's something that Kent could probably take for him to chip in with goals, and then maybe it takes that pressure off the nine a wee bit as well.
Colin, I think that's an interesting point Josh has made there, because I think we saw early glimpses for Todd Cantwell as that he is kind of more that technical player that Rangers. I think Rangers badly needed that, but he is, like you see with example Tillman, he only needs one chance, and there's not many players in that Rangers team. Like for example, Sakala was 4 or 5 before he put the ball in the net. Cantwell, I've been really impressed with him since he came in. I think he's been that link. I've been impressed with Raskin as well. But you look at, again, Ryan Kent, again, he's obviously his contract's coming up. Cholak, I think there's a big difference between Morelos and Cholak, and I thought we saw it on Saturday with Morelos coming on. If you can get that Alfredo Morelos, I think you sign him to a new contract. But that Alfredo Morelos has been seen in glimpses over the past year. You need that hybrid of those two, I think, now.
Definitely, I think we need to start looking at life after Morelos, and for me, it's probably more to his personality and his attitude as well. I mean, Morelos will go in cycles. He'll be flying high. He'll be competing against the best in Europe. Then something will happen. He'll be complacent, then huffy. Then it'll take 6 months to get back up to speed. I'm a big fan of Cholak, and I'm not going to say he played well on Saturday. That was an absolute shocker. One of the worst performances I've seen for a Rangers side in a long time. But I think he was thrown because he was played out in the right. You can see Michael Beale is starting to try new formations, and this is the time to do it when the league's virtually done. Other than the Scottish Cup, then try it out in these league games. It didn't work out, and I think that really threw Cholak. But what Josh was saying about almost comparing Rangers to Arsenal, that's how Michael Beale sets up his teams. He doesn't fixate on a number 9 goal scorer. He tries to get goals all around the pitch. And Cholak he's adapted his game for the start of the season. He was a penalty box striker when we first signed him, and he's worked very hard over the last 3-4 months. You see, he's doing so well at coming deep and letting Sakala and Kent get beyond him, and even like Cantwell and Tillman as well. I think there's definitely a place in the squad for Cholak, and he'll do well in the league next season. But I do agree that we need more than Cholak. We need. I can't see us getting 20 or 30 games that I came out of. So for me, we need another 2 strikers to bring some different qualities alongside Cholak.
Is he injured again, Kamara?
He was born injured. He's always injured.
There's a reason Rangers could get him. Let's be honest. There's a reason he's at Rangers, because he's cropped.
That's it.
Let's be honest.
That's it.
Colin, final point in Rangers obviously was that before the game we saw the stand, certain protests towards. I wrote down in my notes here, protest towards the board. I don't think that's entirely accurate. It seems to be directed more towards Ross Wilson and Stuart Robertson. Now, Ross Wilson, obviously last week, we've spoken in the past about recruitment with Rangers. Josh has probably been bored to tears with it as well. From me, there seems to be now a real anger from the support that I think it's hard to get over. I think when it gets to the stage where there's practically a whole stand in an away game saying they've had enough of you, I think it's very difficult at a club like Rangers. And I have said for years, Rangers supporters are the hardest supporters to please because they've been through so much. When you're at that stage, and now I think we're at that stage, how does Ross Wilson and Stuart Robertson A, defend the position, and B, get that support back on their side?
First thing about the protest, just what I call it, whether you agree with it or no, I think that's how a protest should be done, particularly away from home, where it's on TV, you make your message clear, then you back the team. I've been quite frustrated with the likes of the Union Bears in the past, where they've almost spat the dummy and they've acted like wee guys, but I find whether you agree with it or no, that's a well-staged protest. It is, once you're that far deep into the unrest, it's very hard to claw back. But I think the harsh reality is that Robertson and Wilson are put there by the investors, and if you're going to chase him out, you're at risk. It's no the fans that make the decisions ultimately. It's Douglas Park and the guys who feel money into the club. So that's we spoke last night. We had a really long podcast, and about 15 minutes was on this, and I think for me, there has to be an end game of what the protest is. Like, so what is it? Do you just want them removing somebody else in role? What does that new person in the role have to do to be better? So I think for Ross Wilson, it's a bit more clear cut because the transfer strategy hasn't been good, or it's not been executed well enough. I think it does make more sense. But what I don't really know is what's the end game with Stuart Robertson. I don't think the fans know enough about Stuart Robertson's role. I think he's I'm not going to defend him, by the way, in case anybody thinks, but he's an easy target to label anything you're unhappy about at the club too. But in actual fact, his role in the club is to generate growth year on year. And if you look at the money Rangers are making compared to 6 years ago, he's done that role very well. The issue isn't are Rangers making money, it's how they're spending their money. So that's where I don't think there's enough conversation. It's just, what's your thoughts on Stuart Robertson? Oh, Sydney was terrible.
Yeah.
I don't think he had as big a role to play as the Sydney Cup thing, as we like to say. And then what else about Stuart Robertson? Oh, the signings have been terrible. Well, in actual fact, that's Ross Wilson's remit. So I don't think we were educated enough in what Stuart Wilson, A, what Stuart Robertson's doing, and B, what do we actually want for a managing director? What's his role?
I think that's the thing. Like, when you look at this, you're looking at two things. You're looking at how's the business doing and how's the club doing football wise. As a business, Rangers are probably as strong as they've been since mid-90s, maybe, in terms of just stability.
Aye.
They have money. There's no banks got them by the short and curlies. There's no guys taking money out hand over fist. The Rangers are stable as a business. Rangers are in that position. On the pitch, though, Rangers are second best. And that's the thing. And I think this is the problem Rangers have right now, is that Ross Wilson is clearly not doing his job well enough from a recruitment standpoint. If he was doing his job well enough, Rangers would have won the Cup 2 weeks ago. Rangers wouldn't have lost a 4-point lead in the league last season. That comes down to recruitment. Rangers wouldn't have fannied about in the January window last season to the point where none of those players are still there. That to me is where do you want a stable business and a prosperous football club, or are you willing to sacrifice the business to get up? That's the problem Rangers are at. You can't have both at the moment. I think it's very difficult.
And that's going to be a good bit of rebuilding, but I'll go back to my point where Rangers have invested in this squad.
Yeah.
So, and that's
but
what...
are you getting that investment back? And that's where Josh, I kind of want to bring you in this as well. Celtic have front-loaded money to bring in all those new players for Postecoglou. Celtic will get that money back and gain profit because those players are sellable assets. Rangers could potentially let Alfredo Morelos, Ryan Kent go for nothing. That to me isn't getting the best value out of that investment. That I think is the difference, Colin.
Well, that's the thing is, when you sign a player though, you either get value out of them through playing for your club, or you get value through selling them. You could argue, have you got value through Morelos in terms of playing? You could do, because he's brought a lot of success, a lot of goals, especially in Europe, to the club. I think where the recruitment side comes, it's not just about bringing players in, it's also letting them go at the right time as well. And like, I was actually speaking about this, just using an art team, for example. Look at Real Madrid, for example. I know they're a bigger scale, but doing well. I think they won the Champions League, and then they've obviously got Varane and Casemiro, two world-class players, but they decided no times to move them on because they've got Valverde, Camavinga, they've got Militao. Do you know what I mean? And I know that's a bigger club, but it works the same way. Do you know what I mean? Because things do go stale, but now Rangers are in a situation where I know Tav's the captain, but he's been there for donkeys. Like, he's been through, like, am I right in saying he came through the Championship? We used to do 2 seasons of the Championship and up. Not saying he's no doing or he's not giving his all, but if you do the same job for say 10 years, you start getting a bit sick of that job, don't you? And it's just like, I think by all accounts, people need a change. And then you've got guys like Kent, and then there's guys like Roof, who's been there for ages, just sitting injured, basically, can't get rid of him. You've got Morelos, and there's probably another Barisic, maybe another one that you could probably go through the team and go, he could have probably been moved on maybe 2 seasons ago or whatever. Whereas I actually think the model that you've done with, say, Calvin Bassey is probably perfect. You've brought him in, you've set him on for a value. Whether Celtic or Old Firm fans in general like it or not, that is what these clubs are. And actually, it was interesting when Ange Postecoglou was talking about it, where he was basically saying a message to the fans almost. And it was like the fans were like, oh, why would they leave? But he kind of said, like, we need to prepare for our best players leaving all the time. He basically said that. And I thought, thank God he said that. But then you still got these idiots that come on like the football phone in or their own Twitter, and it's like, why would they want to leave Celtic? Why would they want to leave Rangers? Like, because the full world isn't involved in Celtic and Rangers for them. Do you know what I mean? They are going to leave. Like, but you can manage that process and all. You can manage when they leave, and then if you've got that relationship between them and the club, then you can maybe plan the sort of replacement as well. Like, look at us with Juranovic left, but we had Alistair Johnson coming in. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it's just, it can't go stale, and I feel as if for Rangers it has went stale. But I don't know, like with Ross Wilson, has he ever come out and said anything about the recruitment? Has he said what the sort of strategy is in recruitment? Has he ever spoke about it, or has he just kind of stay quiet? I don't really know if he's ever come out and said anything like to these sort of the fans that are angry about his position at the club.
So obviously the last AGM, a lot of the anger was directed at him. And I think his stance was that he's went out and signed the players that the manager wanted. So I do kind of feel from there. So Johnson, for example, and he's one that gets labelled all the time. Steven Gerrard wanted him before he left. Gerrard left, Van Bronckhorst came in, Van Bronckhorst okayed the signing of him, and then we signed an injury-prone player. So there is a probably wider debate of how much influence does Ross Wilson actually have, but I think so he's very much stuck by the gun of his role is to identify players for the manager, and the manager will have the final sign-off. But I do think if that's the best that he can offer up the manager, then we need to look at the scouting department. That ultimately falls back onto him as well.
Do you think, though, Colin, like, we'll kind of wrap up on this shortly, but do you think there is a potential that Ross Wilson and Stuart Robertson can get the fans back on side?
Aye, well, we're fickle. Football fans are fickle. If we were to win the league next season, win a treble, have a good run in Europa League, all will be forgotten. Just like all from 55 is forgotten. Like, it goes in cycles. It's like we are fickle fans. So I do think it's there, and I think the fans need to learn. And this is come for Rangers fans, but I know we don't learn very easily, but we do need to understand that there is a chance that these guys are going to be here for the long haul, because it's not the fans that make the decision. For better or for worse, we've seen the Rangers chairman and the Rangers board. There is an arrogance about them which sometimes works really, really well and to defend the club and stand up for them, but other times it does cause a divide against the fans. There is a level of arrogance there. It's going to take storming of those eyebrows for them to get rid of the board members if they find they're the right people.
Think about it as well when Celtic, remember when before Ange came in, think about what Celtic was like and all that. There was protests against our board as well, and there was people that basically couldn't say a good word about Celtic at one point, and then we brought Ange in, and Ange just dipped into this market that nobody's ever seen before in this country, and now that's a distant memory. But the thing that worries me, like, see if Ange goes, do we then go back to that old recruitment way we were doing things? Do you know what I mean?
But that's where I think the difference is between the two clubs. Like, I don't really hear much about Michael Nicholson from a Celtic perspective. I hear a lot about Ross. I hear a lot about Ross Wilson in terms of recruitment. I don't think Michael Nicholson's going out saying I want to bring in Kyogo. I think it's the manager. And I think
that the thing is as well though, Scott, like fans are always looking for scapegoats. Like it's all like, so they know for you it's Ross Wilson, but I can actually remember when you won 55, there was at one point where people were shouting about John Kennedy, calling him a defensive coach and that. Just anybody looks for a scapegoat, and it's just sometimes you've just got to be like, I think it does need to come for them. Listen, see, I speak myself as a manager, right? See, if I had a player in mind, and then this guy came to me with, say, 3 players and says, no, you need to pick one of them, and it's different to the guy that you want, and you're not even entertaining them, then I don't think there's a manager in the world that would put up for that. I personally wouldn't have, but well, I'm away, like, because I'm telling you who I want, and I don't. Can you imagine that work with Ange Postecoglou? I just can't see it working like that. Like, they might advise players, but then as the manager, you would look into that player. You wouldn't just go on what Ross Wilson's telling you. So I do think there's a bit of blame to be. It's maybe between them both, the Ross Wilson and the players. Is it the scouting? Is it this or is it that? I don't know, but it just isn't. I just don't think things like that fall in one guy's lap. Not at a club that size. I think it goes between the manager as well, and they've got to take some of that responsibility. 'Cause at the end of the day, you're the guy putting them on the pitch, so you're not going to just bring anybody into your club because some guy said he's a good player. You're going to look into him as well and decide if you want him first and foremost. I'd be very surprised if it worked any other way and if any football club around the world.
Let's move into the rest of the results in the Premiership. Aberdeen, a 3-0 win over Hearts. Again, Josh, just a real turnaround in form for Aberdeen and a real difficult run for Hearts.
Aberdeen can now get third, can't they?
Yeah.
But man, saying they're only 2 points. You would have never have thought that, but again, if you're Jim Goodwin, you're looking at that, and you're a bit. I don't know. I'm looking at my manager said, I'm a bit like, what's happened to you? You couldn't beat Darvel, and now you're away, like flying. Like the boy Duke looks as if he's been a different player. He's absolutely flying as well. Like, and I think for Hearts, like, it was going to be hard for them to keep that form up. But they're the sort of team. I think they'll get back on the horse pretty soon. I don't think that'll last too long. But so I do think Aberdeen need to keep that form up. But listen, fair play to them for turning it round, and to Barry Robson as well. Who likely, if he does get further, I imagine he'll probably keep that job as well, and probably deservedly so. So, no, fair play. I didn't expect that result, to be honest with you. I didn't know that scoreline anyway. When I saw the highlights, Aberdeen played really well, to be honest with you, and probably could have scored a couple more in that first half. So, no, fair play to them. But if you're Jim Goodwin, I'm just thinking if my manager's that one, like, what's happened to you? How come that happened?
Colin, turning it around, looking at Hearts, it's been a bad few weeks.
It really is. And I don't know if Hearts they have the bottle to see a race for third place once we get to the split. I'm just looking at the fixtures ahead, and they're away to Kilmarnock, then at home to St Mirren, then they're away to Hibs. So these next 3 games, they really need to get 6 points into the next 2 games before they go to Easter Road, because I think just with the consistency that Hibs and Aberdeen are finding themselves in, and I know Hibs, the last 2 games were out with that, they've been on a good run of form. But I think Hearts really need to establish a bit more of a gap before we get to the split. It's only 4 points in now. I do see them crumbling under the pressure when they need to go and play Aberdeen, Hibs and the Old Firm.
We'll look at the final games in the Premiership. Livingston beat Ross County 2-1, big 3 points for Livingston, and there was 1-1 draws between Dundee United and St Mirren and Kilmarnock and St Johnstone. Josh, Livingston obviously the big winners, but towards obviously no real change at the bottom of the table.
No, it's not, but again, a VAR decision's absolutely killed Dundee United as well. Do you know what I mean? For getting it, and Kilmarnock, I've seen that, dearie me. Honestly, I think I'd lose. I think I'd get sent off nearly every week. But it's the one at Dundee United again. Like I can get them 3 points. That's a crucial 3 points for them sitting rooted that. But it's not even just the 3 points. It's what that 3 points brings the team as well. The confidence, the momentum, getting into the next game, and you're getting into that international break buzzing a wee bit. Your training's a bit better. Everybody's a bit more happier, and it's amazing what that momentum can do. So, I felt for them. Massive win for Livy as well. To be honest with you, happy for Nicky getting his goal as well.
Yeah.
Really good goal. So, but they needed that. They needed that as well. And I think Ross County will probably look at the other results as well. If we could have sneaked a wee one there, it could have maybe helped them out as well. But I felt for Dundee United, if I'm being honest with you, because I felt as if they probably deserved it. And then at the end of the game, I don't know if you saw the highlights, but I don't know how they don't win it. But I think that sums up the season. They can't score goals. Like they've basically got 2 clear chances with the goalkeeper lying on the floor and don't even hit the target. So I think that sums them up. They just don't score enough. Dundee United and concede too many, to be honest.
Colin, we'll move into the Championship, League One and League Two before we touch on a couple of talking points that have caught the news over the midweek. The Championship, Queen's Park, obviously, big weekend for them. They now go 7 points clear. It's going to be a big clash between Dundee and Ayr on Tuesday night, but Queen's Park, they could potentially be doing the ultimate comeback story here and getting up to the Premiership.
I'm a romantic at heart when it comes to football. I am buzzing for Queen's Park to come up. I'm not interested in. I know the stadium's no ideal and this and that, but it's a proper like for going part time from part time to full time, just in what the space of 5 years is that? I'd love to see them come up. Again, just talk about the mentality in the bottle. There's been a couple of times where I thought they maybe dipped in Dundee. Just looked that for a time they were looking that wee bit more ruthless, and I thought they were going to overtake. But fair play to Queen's Park, they keep on putting distance ahead of them, or between themselves and Dundee. Huge game for Dundee on Tuesday if they want to have any serious challenge for the title.
Josh, looking at League One and League Two, obviously Dunfermline were held at home by Edinburgh. Queen of South beat Falkirk 1-0. Airdrie beating Peterhead 7-0. I think you have to look at League Two for the result of the weekend. Dumbarton 1, Albion Rovers 5. I don't think anybody with a coup on that in the weekend did Albion Rovers beating Dumbarton 5-1.
If you want to hear the boy Bevan, their new striker was flying, so he was. I didn't say it. I'm sure I've come up against him before. Was it Cameron Juniors? Was it?
I think he did come for the East. I don't know where, but I'm sure he came for the Juniors.
I think it is him. He's a good player, so that he is a really good player. But I didn't see that coming at all. To be honest with you, like that's a proper cutting buster. That if you do bet, obviously I don't bet, but that was a real shock. But I know a couple of guys at Rovers. Obviously, I used to be at Albion Rovers myself, so I was pleased to see them get the result, and hopefully that kind of steers them away for the bottom. And it looks as if Bonnie Rig Rose are a bit doomed in that league. It looks as if they're going to go straight back down it. Like it looks because they don't look as if they can really. They don't seem to pick up a run of wins, whereas Albion Rovers look as if they can. And we added Joe Bevan. I'm sure they added another striker as well.
Charlie Riley's been a brilliant addition for that. I think he's been there a couple of years, but they've got Callum Wilson as well, and the boy. Remember the boy Kyle Fleming?
Aye, that's right. Aye, but the thing they're scoring.
Yeah.
And down at that bottom end, and obviously I've been there with Albion Rovers as well, with the relegation battles, and you need the goal scorers because you are going to concede. That's roughly why let's be honest, that's why you're down there, because you've conceded too many goals. So if they've got guys at the other end of the pitch who's going to bang them in at that rate, then that can only be good news for them. But I actually watched the highlights today as well, just touching on Peterhead and Airdrie. God, Peterhead are in a bad way. That was absolutely. I couldn't believe what I was watching in that. Like just not even tackling the Airdrie players, and that was at like 2-0 up. It was really, really bad there. I think they're in a bit of dire straits as a club, Peterhead, to be honest with you. I don't know if they're in danger of maybe doing a breaking, to be honest with you, and can go down again now that they're going, because I think they're struggling with recruitment. Everything their side of the club seems to be really struggling. So, and when I seen that, like, it doesn't look right when professional teams are defending like that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a couple of talking points to discuss. We've got an international special in next week's show, so we'll talk about the Scotland games on that next week. We do have a couple of. There's been a bit of a newsworthy week actually for different reasons. Colin, we'll start with yourself. Obviously, one I'm keen to get your thoughts on. It was announced during the week that the next 2 Rangers Celtic Old Firm games will not have away fans. Again, this has been a bit of a kind of topic for the past couple of seasons. It's been kind of since they introduced the kind of shortening of the capacities. What do we think of this? Are you for it? Are you against it?
Absolute farce, mate. Just what I said earlier. I do buy into the romantic side of the game and the wee boy football fan, and barring like police intervention or something serious happening, there's no reason that away fans shouldn't be allowed to go to the grounds. And I think both clubs hiding behind the health and safety concerns. You can see through that. You're right. It did start a couple of seasons ago, and maybe sound like a bit of a hypocrite. I did. Oh yeah, I did. I did like the idea of Rangers giving back the Broomloan to the Rangers fans. When I first had my season ticket, um, I I couldn't get to the Celtic games because I sat in the Broomloan, and it's scrambling for a ticket. I think I had my season ticket for 5 years before I got my first Old Firm game, so I can understand that. Like that, selling season tickets to fans who can go and sit in their seat every game. But it's right now, it's what club's going to back down first. And I think when we talk about all the issues with Scottish football, Rangers still have too much power. Like there's nobody governing them, and they get a little away with murder. And I'm trying to take my boy to respect staff here. They do. Like it's a farce that any two clubs are allowed to do that. There is a compromise. Like I think the fair compromise would be both clubs going to something similar to the European allocation, and neither club need to compromise in season ticket holders, because I don't like the idea of somebody paying for a season ticket then no getting access to a league game. And again, I might be biased because I went through that, but I don't see this being resolved anytime soon. And again, it's because there's the SPFL, the SFA, they don't have the strength or the control over either club right now.
Josh, what does this say for the Old Firm? Like it's been, I think the past few years it's been the kind of romantic side of the rivalry that we talk about. It's gone. It's gone, and I think that's another example. I know the reason that Rangers and Celtic are both doing this, and I can't see either side giving in.
I think I'll be honest, we make an arse of everything we do in this country, don't we, when you think about it? Like, we get VAR in, we don't know how to use it, we don't know why to use it, we don't use it right, we just mess it up. And then our biggest games, our two biggest clubs, the biggest game that everybody watches in on, and you're generally going to have no away fans there. Like, that's our biggest selling point. Like, everybody tunes in to watch that game. So like we've got to almost parade that and advertise it well. Do you know what I mean? Like, but now like if you had to go and Google, like for example, if you were a guy down south, you had to go and Google like the next Celtic Rangers game. The only thing it'll come up is that there's going to be no away fans there and all these articles about it. It's just a farce, an absolute farce, to be honest with you. And I think, as you say, like they're no governed, they can do what they want. But I generally think somebody just needs to take the bull by the horns and somebody out with Celtic and Rangers, if that's possible, and just say, no, listen, it's going to be this and that's it, whether you like it or whether you don't. The two clubs don't get a say in it. That's what it's going to be. There's going to be away fans, there's going to be this. Go on with the game and let's just showcase it and let's look forward to the games instead of talking about this bullshit with tickets. I don't even know can we swear on this, but it is bullshit, to be honest, isn't it? See, for me, like, I'm a football guy. We fall in love with football. We don't fall in love with stupid debates about the away fans and all that. Like, we want to look forward to the game, no that carry on behind the scene. It's just, see, when I see it now, I'm just like, oh, here we go again. It's back to this carry on again. Like, it really pisses me off, to be honest with you.
See, the difficult thing is, but I think we're all trying to come for the balanced point of view, and back to the whole who do Rangers and Celtic answer to, like they've got too much power in the league, and like so that this person is going to come and say, right, get your heads screwed on, nobody's there. But there's a big section of both supports who are behind this. For the Rangers, they'd happily see no Celtic fans ever in Ibrox again. For Celtic, they'd happily see no Rangers fans ever in Parkhead again. And that's, I don't know if it's a majority or if it's, I don't know what the split is, but they are definitely louder. And and it tends to be probably what we see as the ultras and the hardcore fans who go away and put all their money into the club. And I think that's probably playing into the board's hands where they don't want to be seen to back down.
It does. I get what you're saying as well about that whole scenario with your season ticket. I'll be honest, I never ever thought about it like that until you said it. But I do 100%. I get that. And if it was me, I'd be a bit raging at that as well, to be honest with you. So I totally get it for that side, but there's got to be some compromise, and I don't think that, there's got to be a solution, and the solution can't be that there's no away fans at all at either ground. Like, what other part of the world does that happen in any other rivalry, any other, like, why? It's just like, again, I just say it again, we make an arse of everything. I think we just just make an arse of it.
And staying on that subject, Josh, of big clubs in Scotland having too much power and making what you said of it. You're a manager in the south of Scotland, and the potential SFA Conference League is looking likely to come into play. I know where you stand on it, but explain how you feel about it.
I just think it's a shambles again. I just, do you know what I love as well? Like, because I read obviously all the clubs got the proposal through. There was 3 proposals on it, but the most likely one will probably be option 3, which is the one that's been going about social media, because the other 2 would probably need a lot of voting between all the clubs round about it, and it wouldn't get it.
Yeah.
But what I love is the wee thing they sent me, the wee slideshow they sent me, and it was all about, it's going to promote and better our national team. Like, it's just, you know what I mean? And then the figures come out about how many young players have actually played in our Premier League in our top flight, and it's just miles away. It's just absolutely. Do you know what it is? It's just guys that are so out of sync with every other club and every other part-time club, small club, that they're just so out of sync and out of reality with what's going on at these other clubs that they can't see anything other than through the lens of the old firm clubs or the top sort of 4 clubs in our country. They just can't see it. And no matter what they decide, the clubs just get packed to the sides. There's guys, big clubs at our level, who are making big strides and spending a lot of money, a lot of time and effort, volunteers at these clubs really, really help them. Like, look at teams like Darvel and that, and they're just getting pushed further down the pyramid, and you're never going to see change in Scottish football because you're just protecting the old guard again, and you're making it harder and harder for these clubs that are putting in so much effort. And I've seen it, even just things to get your SFA licence. I've seen it hand in hand how hard it can be to get that, and the hoops you need to jump through. And you've almost made it, if that goes through, you've made it absolutely pointless for the clubs to do that. And then I've seen a thing, but I don't think it's true after reading up on it, but something like you wouldn't get guaranteed entry into the Scottish Cup as well. I think that's a lot of rubbish for what I've heard, but even when I heard that, I thought that wouldn't even surprise me. Like, even clubs for St Cuthbert's, like, I know, like, I don't think St Cuthbert's have get any further than round 1 in like the last, like, their full history. But see the money like we make, like this year we played the Lithgow Rose away.
Yeah.
Like, that money's invaluable to clubs like St Cuthbert's. Like, that could keep us going for the next season or the next 2 seasons. Do you know what I mean? And obviously you split the gate money and all these clubs, so it's like in Scottish Cup games. So it's just, they've just basically, there's certainly enthusiasm in the heart and soul of all these clubs that are trying. It's just a real sickener for these clubs when they hear stuff like that, and they're just basically getting pushed further down the pyramid. And that's basically what it is. You're making it harder, and it's for the purpose of 2 clubs, 3 clubs at the most, and it's to benefit their youth players, not even their first team.
Colin, looking at it as a Rangers fan and a fan of the big clubs, I see to a degree why the B team experiment, that's the route they want to go down. I don't agree with it, but I can see why they want to do it. What do you think as a Rangers fan? Do you think having the B team in the Lowland League is working in terms of youth development? Or do you agree with Josh that the kind of non-league teams, the teams that have sacrificed a lot to join this pyramid system, are getting another wall put in front of them because of this?
From a Rangers point of view, I do think the B teams does add value. I think we've seen time and time again that for the old firm, and I'm speaking as an old firm fan here, that the loans don't always work, but the B teams, where it's in that harnessed environment of the way the club want to play and they want to how they want to mould their players, I think you're very quickly starting to see players coming through the B team that you might know of if they weren't playing in the Lowland League. Leon King, Alec Lowry, Charlie McCann didn't quite make it, but the Rangers sold them off at a profit. So in that sense, it is working. Adam Devine's another one. But going back to the wee boy football fan of me. I don't want that to be the reason that there can't be a reward for teams doing well. There has to be the merit for teams in the junior, the Lowland League, the Highland League. There has to be a compromise somewhere. I do think for the national game that B teams does work in the bigger countries. You look at Holland, Germany, Spain, Portugal, it does work over a longer period of time. But the pyramid isn't sacrificed, and I think that's what we're doing. We're very much picking one or the other, when in actual fact there must be a compromise where we can do something different. My absolute dream is just having bigger leagues, and I mean, a couple of our podders are in their 60s and they talk about the 18 team, the top division in the 70s, and that's the stuff of dreams, man. This whole jump through hoops, and I mean, what does the Lowland League teams and Highland League teams need to do? Is it no something like 2 qualifiers after they win the league to try and?
So basically, see if, for example, from your point of view, so if we won our league, which we did last year, we'd go into a playoff with the winners of the East and the winners of the West, and then you would play like a 3-way round robin game, and then you would then eventually go up. But it's just, but what I don't get is, like, I don't get why can they not just stay in the Lowland League? Why do we even need to change? Why do we need to put another league in there? I get that probably their argument is there's maybe games in there that are maybe too easy for them, right? But see if you just let the next couple of years play out, that's not going to be the case, because your Linlithgow Roses can come up, your Davos
But is
can
that
come
is
up,
that
your
no your
Talbots.
issue? Is that no the issue? Is that no the kind of broader issue here? Like, for example, you've mentioned there about how hard it is to get up. 3 Rovers, right, who were in the south with St Cuthbert's last season, think it's going to be easier to get up the west route than it is go through the south, because they know that the south team, you'll maybe agree or disagree with this, the south team against the east and the west, it's far more difficult. Why are we not in this day and age, you win your league, you go straight up?
I agree. See, the thing with Threave, I'll be honest, I don't get. I need to watch what I'm saying because they're rivals of St Cuthbert's, but I don't get why they done it. To be honest with you, it makes absolutely no sense to me. I don't even think it betters their chances, to be honest with you. But
I don't either. But my thinking of that is that who's going to win? Who's the team that's probably going to win the South this season, right? Do you fancy them? Cretan, do you fancy them?
They've got an SFA license, so they can't go up.
Right, but are they going? Would they be fancying their chances again from Lithgow or Darvel or Beeve or whoever it is?
No, listen, probably not. And probably I shouldn't be saying this, but as a defeated attitude, I don't even know if I'd stand my own chances if I was going up, if I were to win the league as well. But
should that not be the first thing they need to address? Is that you've told all these junior clubs to come into a pyramid system and sacrifice their junior background, and now you're giving them another wall and another step to go up.
Definitely.
Definitely. Why are these teams no sitting thinking, why have we bothered here?
I know, and it's the thing is, like, that you've shown that these clubs are ambitious. Like, look at the result with Darvel and Aberdeen. Like, it's just showing you that it can happen. Like, there's good clubs about to come into these leagues. Like, that's without mentioning, like, I mentioned Darvel and Talbot, but then you've still got other teams in the East, top teams in the East, top teams in the West. And I think over the course, like, the Lowland League could be a top league eventually, in the next sort of 2-3 years, and these B teams will be getting a stern test. You know what I mean? And obviously, I just don't get the need why we need to put just another random league in there.
You've also got that thing as well, and this is kind of the final point I want to make on it, is that you've got the reason the first 2 proposals won't go through is because SPFL teams won't want to get their, because if they go down, it's very unlikely they come back up. It's going to take them a while. And the perfect example of that, you look at likes of Berwick, East Stirling, Cowdenbeath. Another example. Brecon maybe have handled it better than anybody because they're kind of challenging the Highland League, but Cowdenbeath aren't going to get up anytime soon. East Stirling aren't going to get up anytime soon. So they don't want to vote a proposal through that's going to see them lose. And it's the same with the Lowland League teams. There's a lot of Lowland League teams in there that are not anywhere near the level of teams in the West, even teams in the East. But they know if they vote that through, they're not going to get back up.
There's too many teams protected as well. Like, I think it's even a shambles that one team comes down for the Lowland League. Like, so this year you've got Edinburgh and We've got them in a couple of weeks, Dalbeattie, who are sitting at the bottom of that league now. They're not pulling up any trees. Like, you
But
can't tell
is
me.
it no true as well? Sorry to keep interrupting, but is it no true as well that if Dalbeattie go down, they can choose to go into the west or the south?
Well, for what I've been told, you need to make that decision at the start of the season.
But that's a shambles. That's given. You know what I mean?
I know.
They should be.
It's all other
But
places.
they back themselves into a corner with the regional thing.
Aye, that's it. Aye, and then obviously with Freve going there, it's just that. Honestly, as I said earlier on, we make an arse out of everything. That is, we should even just call this podcast to make the arse out podcast, because we do make an arse out absolutely everything we do. Like, let's be honest, we do. Like, we just can't even get the pyramid right. Never mind whatever else we're doing. It's all over the place. Like, it looks as if this Conference League thing's going to happen as well. That's the thing about it. It actually does look as if it's going to happen.
I find it very hard to see how it doesn't happen, because, as Colin pointed out, the big clubs want it, and that trumps everything. That's
it.
The sad thing is I think it's, for what I've seen, it's universally panned by the fans. It doesn't matter if you're a Berwick Rangers supporter, a Rangers or Celtic supporter. I've not seen any fans say this is a good idea. I think they recognise how it could benefit the club, but I've not really seen anybody call for it. And certainly in the circles I'm in with the Rangers, even different Rangers podcasts like Heart and Hand, and I like Gallant Few as well. Nobody's really backing this, and there's no an appetite for it other than the clubs. And I think it just goes back to that thing we say time and time again. The governance of the game's terrible. It's built to appease a few.
And that's where we're at. That is where we're at in Scottish football. Again, we went through a lot in this show, and I want to thank our guests in this week's episode. First of all, Josh Gardner.
Thanks very much, mate. Enjoyed that again.
Pleasure. And thank you very much to Colin MacDuff from the Gallant Few. Really appreciate you coming on.
No, always a pleasure, Scott. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much to everyone that's tuned in. Join us next week. We'll have an international special where we'll have no clubs to talk about, and we'll have probably less fiascos to talk about. So join us for that. Thank you very much to everyone that's tuned in. Please follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels. Thanks, folks. We'll see you soon. Cheers.